What's going on, everybody? Happy hump day. It is your guy Bad Dog. Full crew tonight. We got Adriana down here, back from Greece. Got Anthony over here. We got Tane over there. That's what we got. We got another edition of Giants Collective brought to you by, of course, BetUS. You guys can check us out on YouTube. You can also check us out wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever else you get it. We're also now on TikTok and Instagram. All the links for those are in the description below. If you'd like to become a member of the channel, get custom emojis, monthly member messages, your name in the outro, and access to members-only live chats, you can hit that join button and become a member there. So anyway, welcome back, everybody. It's my fault we were late. I had the intro all screwed up. I had to change it around, so I know we were a couple minutes late. But welcome back, Adriana and Chris. Still in the dog days of spring, as I guess you'd say, here for the Giants. But OTAs did begin today. And in my opinion, I don't really know what to take out of OTAs. Adriana, I mean, you look at OTAs, what can we take out of performance, if anything? What can we take out of OTAs?
I think the biggest thing that I like to see is where guys are in the mix. So I think some of the question marks that we have maybe had this offseason is, from the defensive line, is Darius Alexander going to get any reps with the ones? What is Paulson Adebo going to look like coming back from an injury? Theo Johnson's coming back from an injury. Dexter Lawrence, Bobby O. So I think one of the biggest takeaways is, how did these guys look coming back from injury? Are they able to do all of the reps that they can do at this point? Are they on track to be ready to go for the season opener? We heard that Malik Nabers is dealing with this toe issue that was an issue last year. Apparently it's been an issue from LSU, which that was news to me. I don't know if anyone else remembers hearing about that, which I'm not worried about Malik Nabers at all. He is going to be fine. But these are the things that I think are interesting. And then the thing that I thought was the most interesting that I saw today is the offensive line, because Joshua Ezeudu is back at left tackle with the backups. And I just wanted to punch my screen when I saw that, because I'm like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? So the line that I saw, actually, let me pull it up so I don't misspeak. The starting line was the same as it was last year. It was Thomas, Runyon, JMS, GVR, and then Illuminor, which is fine. That's what it should be, right? But then and James Hudson was getting reps at left tackle. So he, as of right now, they have practicing to be the backup in case Andrew Thomas goes down, which I think is great. This is the twos line from left to right. Ezeudu, Neal, Schlotman, Kubas, and Bo, which I don't have a problem with anyone else. I think it's interesting that Neal is at left guard. I thought he was going to be at right guard, but I don't really care. As long as he's at guard, great. Let's see what he's got. But why is Joshua Ezeudu at left tackle? You brought in Stone Forsythe. Like, what is with the forcing Ezeudu back to the tackle position? I have such a huge problem with that. And that is something that I am going to be watching throughout the rest of OTAs and camp, because I just need to know, like, what the hell they're doing with him.
Yeah, well, the offensive line's been a freaking jumbled mess forever. Well, let's hope we don't have to watch Ezeudu have any reps at left tackle this year. That'd be nice. Anthony, what do you take out of OTAs every year? Is there anything that you can take out of OTAs? Since obviously there's no pads, there's no contact. It's just kind of throwing the ball around with your buddies in the park. I mean, what can you take away from it?
I don't know if you take away anything monumental, but you do start to get an idea of what the Giants are planning for training camp. I think this is where they land. They lay out their roadmap for training camp, for example, with the quarterbacks and the split reps there. Obviously, Russell Wilson got the majority of the snaps, but this time last year, the third-string quarterback, Tommy DeVito, wasn't taking any snaps with the ones. This year, you've got the second-string and the third-string quarterbacks in Jameis Winston and Jackson Dart taking reps with the first team, which I think is important. And I think that's another moment where the Giants are learning from their mistakes, because last year they had Drew Lock and they had Tommy DeVito not take any snaps with the ones. It was all Daniel Jones with the first team. And then obviously Daniel Jones was released midseason, and those backup quarterbacks had to go out there completely unprepared, having not thrown to any of those guys that they were throwing to, and they weren't on the same page. So that's one moment where I say, okay, that's a change from last year, and I think that's an important and a positive change, again, where the Giants are learning from their mistakes. I also think that we see the roadmap for the offensive line, as Adriana pointed out, with Josh Ezeudu at left tackle. Obviously, now we've got Evan Neal at left guard, which I actually do think makes a lot of sense for Evan Neal. simply for the fact that he played left guard in college. I think that having him move to right guard would have been him learning a whole new position all over again. Whereas at left guard, at least he has some experience there that he can lend himself to. So I think that's a positive change for me. And then the last thing that I think you always could take away from OTAs, which UDFAs are starting to point out, right? Like drafted rookies are actually getting some targets, making some plays. Jordan Bly, that wide receiver out of Gardner-Webb, I believe it is, he had 3 touchdowns today, all delivered from Jackson Dart. It's a big day for him, and that means that now that he's on the coaching staff's radar. So I think there is stuff that you could take away from OTAs. Obviously, you have to take all of it with a grain of salt because there is no physicality. There are no tackles and there's no hitting, not even any blocking. So with the offensive line, you're essentially just looking at who's aligning in which spot since they're not even blocking anybody in those spots. And obviously it's all subject to change because let's say Evan Neal's at left guard now, and then he gets totally ran over every single play. When we get to training camp, maybe they move him back to tackle. So again, it's all with a grain of salt, but there are certain things and little like patterns that you can kind of piece out and take away some things from. And again, I think it's going to be more applicable to see this stuff compared to now and contrasted versus when we're finally at training camp in the end of July.
Yeah. Well, speaking of undrafted free agents, I'm pretty sure if I did it was I could be mistaken. I thought I read that Jackson Dart's first touchdown pass was actually to Juice Wells, which made all the sense in the world since they were teammates at Ole Miss. Chris, what do you take away from OTAs, if anything?
I thought that was a good point that Anthony made about the changing of the utilization of the quarterbacks and OTAs in comparison to last year, because last year the plan, at least going into the year, was clearly to have Daniel Jones play all 17 games. This year, I think the plan is clearly at some point, unless the team surprises everybody, Jackson Dart's going to see the football field. So it's valuable to get him some first-team reps as often as you can, while still preparing Russell Wilson to take the reins opening day. So they kind of got to balance that. But that was an interesting point Anthony made. But overall, when it comes to OTAs, and I know we're going to hear a lot of hype, we experienced this as Giants fans with Daniel Jones his rookie year. I don't read anything into it. That's not to say that I don't think Jackson Dart could be great. He could be. We'll see. But I'm not going to read into any of the hype, and on to the contrary, to any of the negative. I remember Daboll and Shane's first year here, people were destroying the Giants in OTAs and in training camp. They said the offense looked completely lost because the defense was ahead. We found out after the fact that the Giants were feeding, or at least there were reports that they were feeding Wink Martindale the plays to test out the offense. And the Giants ended up surprising everybody and having a pretty good year. So to me, the most important thing is health. Get out of OTAs, get out of training camp as healthy as you possibly can, and get into the regular season, and then we'll see what we got. But of course it's important, especially for the younger players, guys like Jackson Dart, to get some rapport with the players on the team. But it's exciting because I guess you feel like football's starting to come back, but at the same time, I don't read a whole lot into it, Bad Dog. Just stay healthy.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is with the quarterback room, it is 100% different outside of Tommy DeVito, which we don't assume he'll get any snaps. And we no disrespect to Tommy DeVito, but we're not looking for him to get. You're not looking for your QB4 to get snaps. You don't want that to happen. So obviously there's a big quarterback room, and not just the young players, but guys like Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson. They got to build rapport with these guys. Well, because Russ is going to be the starter, and he's got to learn the playbook, and he's got to get his timing down. I think a lot of it, OTAs, you can get your timing down. A lot of guys, you can build that rapport. You can learn their traits, learn what they're good at, learn what they're bad at. And you can also build unity personality-wise with these guys without question. One thing I read, and I thought this was interesting. I don't know if you guys read this or not, because I know Anthony reads a lot of stuff. I don't know if Audron had a chance to read it or not, but I was looking at this, and I thought Greg Van Roten said this, and I thought this, I don't know if it was interesting, but it's kind of something we talked about with Russell Wilson being how he's so cerebral and he's like an outspoken leader. He said that Wilson had a really good voice to have in the offensive room. As far as the little things where it's like, we'll watch a clip, he'll go back, like, hey, look at this over here. Make sure you watch this. He says no stone goes unturned with him, and I think that's very important. A lot of guys this time of year are like, all right, it's OTAs, it's May, but that's not his mindset, and it's going to trickle down to the offense, and that's important with him. And again, when we talk about like the best free agent signings that we had, I know we mentioned Russell Wilson. I maybe it's because it's Russ, and just such a vast improvement over where we were the last few years, at least in my mind, it is, that I'm not as down as I probably would be if we were going into the year with the same old downtrodden offense. So I'm kind of excited to see what Russell Wilson brings to this offense, without question. Now, Anthony, you brought this up before. the stream started, before the show started, about Jaylin Hyatt. Jaylin Hyatt got into a war of words with coaches and upper management, kind of got himself in the doghouse last year. We were wondering why he didn't play, because you traded up for this kid. He's got all this potential. Why isn't he playing? Is this something we need to look at this offseason? Will that linger into this year, or do you think he can get out of the doghouse? How does he get out of the doghouse?
Play better, right? Like score touchdowns like he did today, get open, run better routes. That was specifically mentioned in what Connor Hughes wrote. He mentioned that if he shows up this offseason and he's running better routes and he seems more invested in the playbook, then he'll get himself out of the doghouse. I mean, he's definitely still in it though. I know he caught a touchdown pass today and he got some targets, but he also did take practice reps at gunner on special teams. So clearly Hyatt is still in some sort of a doghouse and not viewed as a potential starter by the New York Giants coaching staff currently. And I think my biggest takeaway from that excerpt of that article, I remember last season when Brian Burns was talking to the media after some of those tough losses that the Giants had. And mind you, this is a Brian Burns who was on the injury report for like 8 games last season with 3 different injuries and still didn't miss a game. And I remember him speaking to the media saying, guys in this locker room need to grow up and they need to learn how to play through adversity and not give up on their team. And then here we are, start of OTAs, and now Connor Hughes decides to drop this article and mention, hey, by the way, last year, Jaylin Hyatt fought with the coaching staff, fought with the front office, and then mentally checked out last season. And I think you can start to piece together there were players who were being referred to in those sentences from Brian Burns about growing up and checking out. So I think it's very obvious that there were players who really checked out last season. And then I think you can open a can of worms from that. How do you trust Jaylin Hyatt if he is still in the doghouse? Does he have the mentality and the competitiveness necessary to get out of the doghouse and to not check out this season if the going gets tough, right? Because we're saying, we think that Russell Wilson can help him develop a lot. Maybe he'll get some targets and make some plays this season. Well, not if he's mentally not in it, because Russell Wilson, more so than anybody, is going to recognize who's sharp and who's not. And the guys who are sharp are going to get the ball. And then on top of that, I think you could also open the can of worms and ask about the impact of the quarterback position last year and those guys who were in the room and the impact that they had on the wide receivers. Obviously, Nabers had opportunities last year where he could have thrown the quarterbacks under the bus, but didn't. And then I also think you have to question the coach. If there were players who just mentally checked out, Hyatt's the one that was specifically mentioned in this article, but obviously Burns referred to other guys, and a lot of us took that as him referring to Deonte Banks because it seemed like he checked out at times last year. Then I do think you can open a question mark about the head coach and Brian Daboll. And did he check out last season? Because at times I thought he looked defeated having to deal with the poor performances of the quarterbacks. This is a guy who threw a tablet down in front of Daniel Jones 2 seasons ago. So he's not without his flaws. And I think that at times he looked mentally checked out. So I just think it opens up a whole can of worms getting an article or an excerpt like this from Connor Hughes. And, I think that there's question marks about Daboll, but there's definitely more question marks about the locker room and especially, I think, the leadership within the organization.
With Deonte Banks, not only did he look like he mentally checked out, I mean, physically, you saw it. He admitted it on a play with Jalen Hurts, how he didn't want to hit him. He just kind of chased him out of bounds. Didn't want to hit him. And it was a terrible look. And again, these are reasons why the Giants have been really poor. Not only been out physical and just not played well, but when you have players kind of have that kind of attitude, to me, it is a poor reflection of the coach. Good on Brian Burns to not throw any player in particular under the bus, because that's really where you get a lot of turmoil and you get a lot of dissension in the locker room. So obviously professional with him just saying some of these guys got to grow up. Obviously, Jaylin Hyatt was one of them. Chris, what can Jaylin Hyatt do to redeem himself with the coaching staff in the front office?
Yeah, I mean, as far as last year being in the doghouse and being mentally checked out, I'm not surprised, right? Like at the end of the day, the New York Giants won 3 games last year, however many they won.
3. Don't give us too much credit.
They were down to their 3rd string quarterback. So I'm not surprised that he and probably many others checked out. That's just the reality of the beast when it comes to the NFL, especially when you're not in a situation like the Carolina Panthers were last year, like we talked about several times, Bad Dog, down the stretch where they were building towards something. Bryce Young, the quarterback of the future, was playing well the last 4 or 5 weeks. Even though the team wasn't doing well, there was hope, that you were building towards something. Last year, the team was just a complete disaster. You were hoping to go into the year to be relatively competitive, and there was no player like Jackson Dart on the roster that you could be building towards something with. You knew that Daniel Jones was on the way out. So I'm not surprised that Jaylin Hyatt and I'm sure several other Giants checked out. I'm not saying I advocate for that or that that's a good thing, but it doesn't surprise me at all. How did you get out of the doghouse? Like Anthony said, make plays. when you get on the field, get an opportunity, right? I remember when he got on the field last year and his route running was abysmal, in the game where he got a lot of reps. So make plays, play better. End of story. I don't know if it's the doghouse or if the Giants just don't believe in him as much as we thought they did when they drafted him. They signed Darius Slayton. There's rumors that they were trying to get Gabe Davis. So how much do they really believe in the kid? We're going to find out, though, as the season gets going. But if he plays well with the new quarterback, if he gets an opportunity, he'll get out of the doghouse real quick. You need playmakers.
Adriana, what do you think he can do to get himself on the field and get some reps when it actually counts? What does he have to do in this preseason to do that?
Well, I think from a coaching staff and a front office perspective, he needs to show them that he cares and he's willing to work hard. And to me, that looks like showing up in meetings. It looks like knowing the playbook, being the first one on the field, be the Daniel Jones, be the first one in and the last one out. You want to prove that you should deserve a shot. And, I'm sure we all heard by now that he caught a beautiful touchdown pass from Jackson Dart today. That is the stuff that you need to do. Show that you deserve a spot on this field. Just because the Giants traded up to draft you doesn't mean that you were guaranteed to be a starter. And I know he's really young. I just hope that he has learned at this point that you're not guaranteed anything just because you made an NFL roster. You have to fight for your spot. His team obviously is coming off a really awful year. And I feel like this is a perfect opportunity for him to say, okay, I've been humbled a little bit. I've learned that I got to put the work in, and it's up to me to prove that I deserve to be on this field. He needs to take a note out of Cam Scadaboo's book, who said, I haven't earned anything. I don't deserve anything. And I hope that at this point, that is what Jaylin has learned. So I think there's a lot of us who are still rooting for him. We want to see him succeed. The coaching staff, I'm sure, also wants to see that, but it's up to him to prove it. So I would really like to see him get involved, to be humble. I hope that he's listening to the coaches and he's taking advice from someone like Darius Slayton, who's been on the team a long time. And, he's willing to improve. Because like I said, there are people, I'm one of them, who are really rooting for him. And it's, who doesn't want another good wide receiver on this team? I think it would only benefit everyone. So I just hope he's learned from that.
Yeah, because it's just something we don't have. Just a guy with straight on speed. I was a huge fan of Jaylin Hyatt when they drafted him. I was wondering why he couldn't get on the field myself. To Chris's point, I get you're human. You constantly lose. You're going into games with Tim Boyle at quarterback. It is very easy to have a letdown, probably figuring we're not
flying over the stadium. The fans are booing you.
Right. It's easy to get in that mindset. I understand that. But again, you're a professional athlete and you need to act as a professional athlete all the time. To Adriana's point, Jaylin Hyatt hadn't earned the right to take plays off or not work hard or whatever. Like, he hasn't earned the right. If you're a veteran, I'm not saying Dexter Lawrence took plays off, but if you're Dexter Lawrence and I know he got hurt, but if say it's week 16 and he's kind of going easy in practice and he ain't giving 110%, you can understand why. But when you're a rookie, for me, in a season like that, that's your time to shine. Like, I feel like that's a time you really need to prove yourself. Hey, look at what I can do. This is a perfect time for him to have an exhibition for himself and say, look what I can do. And like Chris mentioned, he was terrible in the games he played. He dropped passes, route running was bad. I still have hope for him. You don't win the Fred Biletnikoff Award for being the best wide receiver in college by accident. There is a ton of talent there. You hope that he comes in the better attitude. Like Adriana said, you hope that he got humbled a little bit and realized I have to work. And you hope a guy like Russell Wilson can get in his ear a little bit and say, hey, listen, kid, you got a lot of talent, man, but nobody's going to get to know that talent if you don't work hard. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't work hard at this level, nobody's going to know you have any talent. You got to earn your way out on the field. And this is why, this will lead into my next question to Chris, because I mean, the more I talk about Russ, the more excited I get. I don't know why.
Yes, me too.
Chris, honest, I don't want to say excited. How optimistic are you that Russ can at least make our offense somewhat respectable? Obviously, we're not going to be Buffalo, but how optimistic are you that Russ can turn this around a little bit?
Respectable, I think, is a fair possibility. Like, I don't think they'll be more than respectable, but I think respectable. I think he could be a game manager, and I think they can make some plays this year. Obviously, if you have Malik Nabers on the field, you're always capable of turning a slant into a 75-yard touchdown, as we saw last year. He has big play capability. Theo Johnson, right? I think he could take a big step up year two. Second year with this offensive line playing together with an improved quarterback. You hope that takes a step up. You have an improved running back core. So, and Brian Daboll's a good play caller, or at least that's what we've been told. And now he has a quarterback that he thinks he should be able to maximize. So we'll see. Respectable. I'm not going to expect anything more than that. I still think it's going to be hard for this team to win more than 6 games, especially with our schedule in the division that we play in. But I think the offense could be respectable, especially if the defense is as good as we think it could be, because that should only assist the offense with better field position, things like that.
Yep. Adriana, what do you think? How optimistic are you for Russ to at least make the offense look somewhat like knows what the hell it's doing out there?
I'm really trying not to get overly excited because the schedule's brutal, and I really don't think that we're going to win a lot of games this year. But I think respectable is very fair, and I think that we are going to be an offense that is functional and can actually average more than 14 points a game. And we've talked about this when we look at film or rewatch games from last year, that the wide receivers were getting open. It was really the quarterback that was holding them back. And, I think it was Bobby O was asked during his press conference about Russ Wilson, and, GVR has talked about him. All of the feedback that I've heard from other players is all extremely positive when it comes to Russ Wilson. And look, I don't expect them to say anything bad about him, of course, to the media, but they have gone above and beyond to talk about his leadership capabilities, that he's a 10-time Pro Bowler, that he's got a lot of really good experience in the league. And I just feel like the fact that the players really respect him, I think it's very obvious from that standpoint. Like someone else, and I think it was Bobby O, talked about how, Russ is involved in everything. And when they have had meetings where they're watching film, he'll pause the film and say, did you guys see that? Is everyone watching this and paying attention to these things? And he's pointing out little things here and there. So to me, I just feel like it's such a big step forward from the quarterback room that we've had from the last couple years that I feel like it's kind of hard not to be a little optimistic. Again, we know that Daboll's able to scheme these guys to get open. We know that you've got a freak like Malik Nabers who's going to catch, 98% of the balls that come his way. Darius Slayton is mostly reliable. The offensive line was decent before Andrew Thomas went down. So I think it's fair to say that the upgrade at quarterback position is going to be wildly different in a good way this year. And I really hope that we see that from the get-go, but I do like everything, all the things that I heard in the press conferences today, the way that everyone spoke so highly about him and how he's so detail oriented and he's involved in everyone. And, him talking about Jaylin Hyatt, I'm like, God damn it. Don't give me hope. You're going to ruin it for me.
Yeah. I could see it being like what maybe not the same exact type of offense, because obviously Daniel Jones was used more as a runner than you think Russell Wilson's going to be used as. I could see it being comparable to that offense. That offense was like league average. They finished right around the middle of the pack the year that the Giants made the playoffs. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, which would be respectable.
Anthony, I know you're also a big Russell Wilson fan. How optimistic are you that he can help this offense, again, at least be respectable where we're not embarrassing ourselves time in and time out when we get on the field?
I'm super optimistic, as I've been saying, about this Giants team in general, just because of the quarterback position, because of Russell Wilson. And I think that my optimism was reaffirmed today, hearing the quotes about Russell Wilson. You mentioned the one from Greg Van Roten, but there was also one from Bobby Okereke where he said that the leadership in the quarterback room is completely different, and that Russell Wilson, being an experienced veteran, a Super Bowl champion, a future Hall of Famer, walks with a different aura about him, is what Bobby Okereke had to say about Russell Wilson. Everybody's clearly gravitating towards the quarterback as the leader of the team. And I think that's something that the team has probably lacked over the last few years. And I think it's really important. The quarterback position is the most crucial in all of sports. If you've got a great quarterback, it'll change your entire franchise. And if you have a great quarterback who's a great leader, it'll go tenfold. And so now you've got a quarterback, maybe he's not great anymore, but at least he was once great, and he's still super detail-oriented. He still shows up and shows out and puts in all of the work as a 10 or 14-year veteran, however long he's been in the NFL, doesn't matter. He still acts like he's a rookie. Like, he still goes out there and competes and tries his best to improve every single day. And that's that kind of example that from a great player gets set in front of all of the other players that the Giants have, and it makes a big difference. So I think that it's going to transform the offense. I think you're going to get more efficient passing. I think you're going to get more efficiency prior to the snap and post snap with his reads against the coverage. So I can't say enough good things about the impact that Russell Wilson could have on this team, not only from an offensive standpoint, but again, just from a leadership standpoint. I think that's one of the most crucial aspects that he brings to the table. And I think we're already seeing the effects of that during OTAs.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Like Chris mentioned, I don't expect Russ to be what he was in Seattle. Okay, I know those days are behind him, but to your point, Anthony, the leadership, it's just something that can go unnoticed. It's one of those intangibles that doesn't show up in the box score. I feel like Russell Wilson knows he can do it. He has done it. He is going to Canton. He has won a Super Bowl. He's played into it. Let's be honest. Should have won 2 Super Bowls. Just turn and hand the ball off to Marshawn Lynch, and he's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. There's no way the Patriots are stopping him on the 1 yard line. So, that's kind of on him and Pete Carroll. I don't know who called that or why that was called, but that's neither here nor there. He knows he can win. And I think he has a lot of confidence. You mentioned he walks with a different aura. See, I feel like Russell Wilson walks around knowing he can do it, where Daniel Jones kind of walked around hoping that he could do it. And the mindset is completely different. The confidence goes such a long ways, especially at that position. And there's no question Russ is confident in his abilities. And I think that he's going to be confident in the players around him. I hope he ends up being confident about the offensive line, because if there's one big question here, I don't think it's going to be Russ's the question. The offensive line, can it hold up? Can it protect Russell Wilson? And can Russ get through 17 games? Or, if we're bad, can they get through 4? Whatever it is. I hope we're not bad. I hope we don't see Jackson Dart this year. I hope that the Giants are in the playoff picture. And after the bye, Russell Wilson is still the starting quarterback. Because if our offense is serviceable, Chris said in 2022, serviceable. We're about average. We went to the playoffs, and that was with a lesser defense, in my opinion, than the one we have on the field now. And that was without Malik Nabers. So, what can the Giants be if their offense is just average? It'll be interesting. Can they make the postseason? Who knows? What I do know is this stream is brought to us by our good friends at BetUS. You can go to BetUS right now. You can check out the promo code YouTube150. Enter that. You get a 150% match deposit bonus on your first deposit. 125% match deposit bonus on your second and third deposit, all up to $2,000 bonus cash. Great customer service, 24/7, 365. The best payouts in the business within 24 hours, and you get 10% gambler's insurance against all your net losses, as long as you stay active every 6 months. The terms and conditions apply. And when you gamble, we ask that you do it responsibly. Don't ever gamble more than you can afford to lose. Can the Giants make the postseason? Well, wow. There are the odds. Not very favorable that they're going to make the playoffs, as you see there. Minus 1,400. What that means is you'd have to bet $140 to win 100.
No. That means you'd have to bet. No, you'd have to bet.
That's right. You have to bet 100. No, you have to bet 140 to 100, right? Isn't that? Because if you bet 100, you can win 700 there. That's 7 to 1 that they make the postseason. But you have to bet $140 to win $100. That's what that is.
I think minus 140. You'd have to bet 140 to win 100. It's minus 1,400.
Wow.
Yeah, I think Chris is right.
Yeah, I think you got to bet 1,400 to win 100.
Oh shit, you're right. That's crazy. It is 14 to wow. They really have no confidence. That is insane. Don't make that bet. Don't bet that. If you're going to bet on this. If you're going to bet on this, take the yes. You have nothing to gain by taking the no there. $1,400 to win $100 is crazy.
I'm going to tell you what, Bad Dog. I wouldn't bet on this because I don't think the Giants are going to make the playoffs. But the value is good here. It's the NFL at the end of the day. Half the league now almost makes the playoffs.
Right.
So there's always 3 or 4 surprise teams in the NFL. If you told me this roster with this schedule, if they played out 7 different seasons, would they make the playoffs once? I would say probably yes. And that's what the odds imply. It's a 7-to-1 shot. So for the odds, I don't think it's bad, but I wouldn't bet on it because I don't think they're making the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be tough, but I definitely wouldn't even bother with the no. $1,400 to win $100. That's I don't know if I've ever seen outside of us winning the Super Bowl. I mean, what were we to win the Super Bowl? We were minus 2,000, right? Or minus 2,500. I forget what it was.
I think it was 2,800.
Whatever it is, it was
was that Daboll Coach of the Year?
It was a very long shot. I like the Daboll Coach of the Year. That I thought she had good odds to win that.
That was like 30 to 1, wasn't it?
But yeah, it's crazy. 1,400.
That's a smarter bet than the Giants making the playoffs because you're getting better odds, 30-1 as opposed to 7-1. Because if the Giants make the playoffs, Daboll's probably winning Coach of the Year, and you're getting quadruple your value. So that's the better bet.
That's $1,400. $1,400 to win $100. That is crazy. Adriana, you kind of touched on this at the beginning of the show. Malik Nabers obviously does have a toe thing. He did have this, and I don't know if it's turf toe. It just says toe injury. And turf toe is a weird thing. It doesn't sound like oh, that hurt. It's kind of like tennis elbow. It's like, the tennis elbow. That's a bullshit injury. I've had tennis elbow, man. That shit hurts. It hurts to shake someone's hands like someone's sticking a knife right in between your. It hurts like hell. Turf toe is kind of the same thing. It's ligament damage. I don't know if that's what he has or not, but you did mention, and it did say that he had this injury at LSU. Is there any reason to be concerned at all that this could linger throughout the year? Because you mentioned that he kind of dealt with it last year. Is it something to be concerned about, or is it just get him some rest and he'll be okay?
So I think they said last year that it was turf toe, but the thing that's concerning to me about it now is that no one ever said that it was a lingering college issue. Like, when I'm fairly certain that when he got injured last year and they said it was turf toe, there was no mention. And we know Daboll is like that. He's hush hush. He did it again today with the injuries. No one's allowed to know anything. It's Fort Knox.
Got a toe.
But the fact that it's from college, that's what makes me a little concerned. If it was just from last year or whatever, these injuries come and go with all of these players, it sounds like. I don't know anything about turf toe. I don't know how to fix it. But what I do know is that if it's a lingering issue, like, is surgery an option? If surgery is an option, why is it not being considered? Maybe it's not an option. I think he's going to be the type that will play through it if the medical staff allows him, and he will say, give me cortisone shots or whatever it takes, and I'm going to be out there and I'm going to play. So I'm not worried about it during the spring season. I'm not worried about him as a player. I think he's going to be just fine and he's going to be able to play week 1. But I do worry that he could miss more time like he did when it was an issue last year. So it makes me a little concerned that it was a college injury issue, because we have enough injuries. And it sounds like, if it's now lingered for multiple years in a row, it sounds like it's not going anywhere. So, yeah, I think it's fair to be a little concerned about it.
Anthony, how concerned are you about his toe? He's got a toe. So, Coach, what's up, Malik? Yeah, Malik's got a toe. How concerned are you about his toe?
I don't know, because it is only OTAs, so they could have just found any excuse not to have him participate in OTAs and said, oh, it's a toe and it's been lingering, and maybe they just don't want him participating, out of risk of injury or out of just maybe wasn't up to it, whatever. So I just think it's kind of hard to interpret, of course, because Brian Daboll himself is hard to interpret. But if it really is a lingering issue from college 2 years ago, then yeah, it's something that the Giants need to monitor closely. And like Adriana said, if there's a way to speed up the recovery process or clean it up with surgery or whatever, then I guess go ahead and do what's got to be done, But I for now, I'm just going to be optimistic and not read too much into it, just because it is only OTAs. If this was during training camp, if he wasn't practicing, I'd definitely have a level of concern. But since it's May and he's got a long time, he's got all of June to recover essentially before training camp at the end of July, I'll just, kind of not read too much into it for the time being.
Chris, what do you think? Any reason to be concerned about this, or is it just he's fine, just rest up, he'll be ready to go for training camp?
Well, when it comes to the Giants, I'm always concerned when it comes to like Saquon Barkley had a clean bill of health in college. Like, he had you were like, oh, this guy's never going to get hurt when he gets to the pro. There was no signs of injury. He couldn't stay on the field. He was always hurt when he was a New York Giant. So whether they have an injury history, whether they don't, I'm always concerned as a Giants fan. And maybe some of that has to do with the turf. Some of that has to do with the medical staff. Some of it has to do with just awful luck. But the Giants always seem to have bad luck when it comes to injuries. But, of course, you look at Andrew Thomas, right? I think at this point we've all talked about that. That's a major injury concern year over year, because now it's become a pattern. And if he gets hurt again this year, all of a sudden you say, well, I don't know if this guy's going to be able to, be a consistent player at the NFL level. Hopefully that's not the case. So, yeah, I mean, I get it, especially if it goes back to college, that maybe it's a slight concern. I'm not going to go nuts. It's OTAs, like Anthony said. If it lingers into the season, it's something that's reoccurring. Yeah, maybe it's something he's got to get surgery on in the offseason next year. But I'd be concerned if he didn't have any injury history. It's the Giants. Players just always seem to get hurt when they play for us in recent history.
Yeah, I think that says it all. It's the Giants. I don't freaking trust anything they do, man. We just seem to have really rotten luck when it comes to this. Is an interesting question by Mickey, and then we'll start with you on this because I think that's where we left off. My dog likes to bark too. Mickey says week 15, the Giants have managed 6 wins. You start if he's ready. You start Dart if he's ready. So at that point, they have a bye week 14. They'd be 6-7 at that point. Would you go schedule. Right? Because week 14 is their bye. They would have played 13 games at that point. If they won 6 games, they'd be 6-7. I'm pretty sure.
I think I'll start real quick. For me, it would depend. At that point, you're more than likely still in playoff contention at 6-7, right? Because 7 teams make the playoffs, and the Giants' schedule, if I remember correctly, is actually probably its lightest the last 4 games. Not that it's light, but I remember looking at the schedule, being like, that's probably the softest part of the schedule, if you could call it that. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but if they were in playoff contention, I think it would be a hard sell for the team to bench Russell Wilson. So if they're 6-7, at least for the next game, I would anticipate Russell Wilson would start. Now, if they lost that game, then at that point, maybe you insert Jackson Dart, you fall to 6-8. But at 6-7, you could still finish the year 10-7 and likely make the playoffs. So I don't think they would pull the cord on Russ at that point.
Anthony, what do you think?
I think it just depends because Chris is right in everything he says, but then it just boils down to how is Russell Wilson actually playing? Is he the reason for some of those losses? Is he the reason for all of the wins, right? Like there's context that you would need to know. 6-7 is a pretty decent record. That's respectable. You're in the hunt, right? You're still competing. I would imagine 6-7 going into week 15. If you win out, you probably have a chance of making the playoffs. So yeah, you probably want to keep Russell Wilson in the lineup if he's playing well. But if he's been the detriment in a lot of those 7 losses, and the Giants feel like if Dart is ready, as the comment says, that he could provide a spark and maybe play better, then you will roll with Jackson Dart. I think it is similar to when Eli Manning took over, right? Weren't the Giants still in the playoff hunt? Yeah, so they were 5-4, so they still had a chance, but they thought that Eli could provide a spark. Obviously, in retrospect, he couldn't then, did years later. But if they feel like Jackson Dart's going to provide a spark, I don't see why not. But again, it's just really going to be the context of it. It's going to depend on how many of those losses and how many of those wins you attribute to Russell Wilson at the time.
Oh, John, what do you think? They're 6-7. You probably are in playoff contention. And like Chris said, our toughest part of the schedule is over. It's tough all year long, but if they get through the first 13 games, 6-7, they've played some of the best teams in the NFL. And their schedule.
I'm looking at the last 4 to just put it in context. They play, it's not easy. There's not an easy part of our schedule.
Right.
But the last 4 games, it's home against Washington. It's home against Minnesota, who, at least going into the year with J.J. McCarthy, you feel it's at least possible they could take a step back. The Raiders, which may be the softest game on their schedule, on the road. And then home against the Cowboys, who I envision that as a 50-50 game going into the year at home because I don't think the Cowboys. So I could see at least 2-2 out of those last 4. That's my outlook. Just want to give you guys the last 4 games.
Yeah. Well, Jordan, what do you think they do at that point?
Yeah, well, and I think it also depends on what the division looks like, because if they feel like at that point in the season, they know they have 2 more division games, and then like Chris said, the Vikings and Raiders are possibilities, then you have to think about it as we can win these games and still have a shot maybe at playoffs or whatever. If the Commanders are 8-5 at that point, like you're pretty close to them, right? Same thing with the Cowboys. So I think it really all depends on what the division and everything looks like as a whole at that point. But like you guys said, like if Russ Wilson is the problem or something like that, then, I think they can give it a good excuse as to say, all right, we're going to toss Jackson Dart in here and see what happens. But I think if they're 6-7, I would be more surprised if they did that than if they didn't. Like, I think they'd have to have like 3 or 4 wins at that point and say, all right, the season's over. We have no chance at this point. Let's see what Dart can do.
Yeah, and what some people may say is they may say, well, look what they did in Eli's rookie year, right? I think the team was 4-3 or 6. They had a winning record. 5-4. And they said that they pulled the plug, but that's a completely different scenario. He was the first overall pick. I think with Jackson Dart, you're afforded the luxury as a late first round pick if you're in playoff contention to sit him out the entirety of the year.
Well, it's interesting because Anthony makes a good point. It has a lot to do with context. If the Giants have snuck by some of these games because they've relied on the defense and Russ is playing below average, then maybe you do say, even if we go 2-2, or what is our future here? We're not going to win a Super Bowl, but Russ isn't playing well. He's been playing subpar. What does this benefit us at this point? And Eli, yeah, he started to us where we were 5-4. Kurt Warner was kind of brought in to be a backup. I don't think Kurt Warner was happy that he got sat. I think Russell Wilson knows at some point that's going to happen. He's kind of playing for a contract this year. But you wonder, I know Eli struggled kind of a little bit at the beginning of his career. That rookie season, he was dreadful. He was about 50%. They were 1-6 with him in there. He was not very good at all. Honestly, he was bad. But the next year, the Giants went 11-5, and they went to the postseason. They won the division. And Eli, if I'm not mistaken, was top 5 in touchdown passes. Now, people can point interceptions all they want, but he threw 24 touchdowns. So how much of that rookie season, him getting his feet wet, learning the NFL, learning the speed of it, learning the defenses, learning the playbook, learning everything else. Now, obviously, getting Plaxico Burress helped him in 2005. But it's something you have, Jack Snart. Let's put him in there. Let's get him the experience now. And you know what? Let's just see how he plays. If he plays really well and they go to the playoffs, then Giants fans are going to be like, all right, man, this is our guy. Well, what do we got here? I'm excited to see the future. And if he stinks, you can just say, you know what? You got him some experience here late in the year. They were meaningful games. Let's see if he can grow from this, because he's going to have to prove himself at some point. So you drafted him, you traded up to get him 25th overall for him to be your future quarterback. So I can see both sides of the argument. I would love to be in that scenario, Mickey. I'm hoping
that'd be great.
We are 6-7, and they have to make that decision, because I don't want us to be, 3-10. And we're going with Jack Snart without question.
And kind of what Quote said, he kind of stole my thunder with what Anthony had to say. And who knows? How do we get to that 6-7, right? But looking at our schedule, I kind of side more with Quote. I find it very hard to believe if the Giants start 6-7 against this challenging of a schedule, Russell Wilson's playing poorly. I think he's at least playing pretty well if the Giants are 6-7, which is why I don't see them benching him at that point.
Yeah, this is a really good question here by Pickle Nickel Tickle. Is nobody concerned that Nabers doesn't like New York pizza? This seems like a real problem to me. Anthony, take that one. What? How do you not like New York pizza? Is this a problem?
Well, I could say, residing in South Florida, I long for New York pizza every day. It's like the number one thing that I miss so dearly about living in New York, probably above many of my family members. So.
How old were you when you left New York, Anthony?
Like 12, but I go back every year. So yeah. I can remember the pizza, that's for sure. Yes, I long for the pizza daily. Anytime I have pizza here, even good pizza here, it's not quite like New York pizza. So it's definitely a problem, and Malik Nabers needs to fix that problem.
Chris, what do you think? Is this is a major issue?
I remember when Darius Slayton tweeted out something about how great New York pizza was, and I'm like, okay, he's officially a New Yorker. The fact that Malik Nabers doesn't like New York pizza, I mean, I love Nabers. I think he's the most talented wide receiver in the league, if not top 2 or 3. I think if he could stay on the field, he's going to be a Hall of Fame player for the Giants. But I got to question his taste buds at that point. How do you not like New York pizza? That's a problem for me. He's got to get that. He's got to go to the right pizzeria.
Well, also, it's like, what kind of pizza do you like? Are you a Chicago pizza fan, which is not real pizza? Like, what? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Pizza,
how do you not like New York pizza? I mean, I know he's from Louisiana, but what other kind of pizza that you had that's better is the real question.
Do we even have pizza in Louisiana? I don't even know. I've been to New Orleans. I remember Cajun food. I remember and a lot of alcohol. I don't remember anything about pizza when I was in New Orleans. I can tell you that it is a problem. What would be a bigger problem, though, is if he put pineapple on that son of a bitch, because we don't do that. You don't put pineapple on your pizza. I'm going to go to my grave saying you don't put pineapple on your pizza.
Okay, but it is good.
Audrey, we don't put pineapple on our pizza.
I had it once. I would never order it. I would never go to a pizzeria and get it. My friend's wife loves it. She does the pineapple and ham. It was okay. I wouldn't order it again, but I get the appeal. I get why people like it.
We don't do it. I don't give a shit what anybody's like. It should be illegal. It should not be allowed at all. It's always a joke that we have on the channel. That's pretty funny. Where did I see? I saw something I wanted to read. Where was it? It was by Charles Barkley, and I saw, what was this?
We got Charles
I'm
Barkley.
having a hard time. What's that?
We got Charles Barkley in the chat. That's awesome.
Yeah, he's always in the chat.
I know. He's one of our regulars.
I don't know where this went. I saw something I wanted to read from him, and I can't find it. I can't find the damn thing.
I'll find it.
If you guys have any questions, ask them out in the chat. By the way, if you haven't done so, please hit that thumbs up, subscribe, ring the bell, all that good stuff. Closing on 5,000 subscribers, over 4,800, which is pretty awesome. So let's get to 5K. I saw it here, and now I don't see it anymore.
Maybe are you either? I'll read what he said. He said after that speech Justin Tuck gave, they're going to make the playoffs.
That's where it was. That's the one I was looking for.
Okay.
Was the Justin Tuck one? There it is. Charles Barkley said after the speech Justin Tuck gave, they're gonna make the playoffs. And we just saw the odds are not very good.
Vegas wasn't swayed by the speech, Barkley.
No, they weren't swayed by the speech. Listen, players have given great speeches before. At the end of the day, Justin Tuck isn't walking through the door. He's not suiting up on Sundays. The Giants have got to get their shit together. What do they have to do? If we were going to make the playoffs, we probably got to win at least 9 games, I would think. I mean, at the very, very, very least, say the NFC has a down year, they win 8, to get the postseason. 8-9 is very possible with 7 teams going to the postseason. 2022, everything seemed to go right. Chris, do we have to have a year like 2022 where everything goes our way? What does this team have to do?
Yes, I maybe everything going our way, maybe not quite that, but in 2022, the team stayed pretty much healthy in terms of the key pieces on that team. Daniel Jones stayed healthy for the only time in his entire career. Barkley stayed healthy. He had his best year as a pro, as a Giant, at least outside of his rookie year where he was insane. Andrew Thomas stayed healthy all year. Dexter Lawrence, like all the key players stayed healthy. So if you want to consider that luck, especially as a Giants fan, you probably should, because the team's always hurt. So if the team stays, all the key players stay healthy for the most part, we got a shot. But ultimately, if this team's going to make the playoffs, it's going to be on the defensive side of the ball. It's our defense is going to have to carry us, and the offense is going to have to be kind of like what we talked about earlier. The 2022 offense, they don't lose you football games. They keep you in games. They make key conversions. You have a guy like Nabers who could have some explosive plays, but I think if they're going to make the playoffs, the side of the ball that's going to do the heavy lifting is going to be on that defensive side with that pass rush.
Speaking of which, just real quick to go back to the pizza thing, if the Giants make the postseason, I think that show we each need to have some pizza. I don't know what Anthony's going to do. He lives in Florida. I don't know what he's going to do. But I think we have to celebrate with a piece of pizza. I think it has to happen if they make the postseason. When we do our postseason show, we got to have some pizza. Adriana, what does this team have to do to get to the postseason?
I agree that everything has to go right. And I think that's because of the schedule. I think if they had an easier schedule, they could afford to, suffer from some injuries or have, penalties, mistakes here and there. And I think they would be able to get over that. But I just think with this schedule, everyone has to stay healthy. The offense has to average at least 21 points a game, and the defense has to get turnovers and sacks. And if all of those things happen, and Kafka's calling good plays, which he was doing today, which he was also doing during rookie minicamp. If he continues to call the plays, Daboll doesn't make boneheaded decisions, like messing up with the kicker and things like that, then we should win 10 games. If all of those things happen, then I'm playing the lottery. That's
you mentioned the kicker. You mentioned the kicker. He's got to stay healthy. He was a huge part of why that team made the playoffs in 2022. We got Pro Bowl Graham Gano, who stayed healthy. He was automatic from 55 yards and in. Hasn't been that way the last 2 years. And when you have a team that is you have everything that needs to break right for you to beat good teams, your kicker can't be missing kicks. So that's a big part of it too.
Anthony, what do we got to do if the Giants are going to make the postseason against all odds at 7-1? What do we got to do?
Score points, have a good offense. Even in that 2022 season, that offense was still average at best, had its flaws, was held back by many different factors. This year, if they can have an above average offense, I expect their defense with the amount of talent that they have to be top 10. I mean, if they're not top 10, it's got to be the fault of Shane Bowen. So if you have a top 10 defense, theoretically, an average offense paired with a top 10 defense should get you into the playoffs. And I would prefer that it be an above average offense. So if they have that plus a top 10 defense, That's the recipe. So I think the defense is going to do its job. It's going to, handle itself, but the offense needs to handle business for once under Brian Daboll. And I don't think Daboll's had a whole lot to work with, but at the same time, he was supposed to be this offensive guru, genius, mastermind, whatever word, term, label you want to give him. And so far, the offense has sucked throughout the first 3 seasons of his tenure here. So now year 4, let's put it all together. Let's get a good offense on the field, and that'll be the key to making it to the playoffs.
I think health is monumental. I think that you, like Chris said, in 2022, our key players played all the games outside of the last week when it didn't matter. Andrew Thomas healthy all year. Daniel Jones was healthy all year. Saquon Barkley was healthy all year. The major components of the New York Giants stayed healthy. If Russell Wilson stays healthy all year, Malik Nabers stays healthy all year, our defense is healthy all year. Maybe they miss a game here and there, but like no major things where they're missing half a season. I think that this team is talented enough. If you just hang around in these games, I always feel like getting off to a good start is so important, like we did in 2022. Brian Daboll set the tone right away. Went for 2 against Tennessee. Chris called that. We were calling the game. It was like 8 minutes ago. Chris goes, he's like, what if they get down here and they have a chance to win with a 2-point conversion? You think he goes for 2, and with about 2 minutes to go, we saw that. Now, granted, Tennessee went down and they missed the kick, but we ended up winning. And you saw the Giants were able to come back a lot that year because they'd been there before, and I feel like you got comments. Okay, we've been here. We can do this. I feel like it's very important. If the Giants are going to make the postseason, they got to get off to a good start and get some confidence saying, we've been here. We can do this. We can win. We know how to win. Where it was if they lose, it kind of started getting a mindset. Okay, how are we going to blow it? Here we go again. How are we going to lose this week? I feel like health and getting off to a fast start is something that the Giants really need to do this season. And real quick, I'll just answer this one, Tiggy. Bad Doug, would you eat pineapple pizza every Sunday if it guaranteed the Giants a winning record? Well, I don't eat pizza on Sunday. It's not my cheat day. However, I would sacrifice.
You're damn right.
I would eat pineapple pizza if it meant the Giants didn't make the postseason. I absolutely would. I just would not order it, but I would eat it.
You would order it if it guaranteed the Giants to play.
Someone had to order that.
Start to love it because you would associate pineapple on pizza with the Giants winning, and then that's it every Sunday forever.
Can I eat the pineapple on the side of the pizza? Does it have to be on the pizza? Can I have a pizza by itself and then have like a pineapple bowl or whatever? And can I do it that way? I don't know. Anthony, you mentioned, but the question is yes. I listen, the year they won the Super Bowl, I've said this before, in 2011, I had a big screen TV upstairs every Sunday. I had cinnamon rolls for breakfast every Sunday they played. I came down here and I watched a shitty, big-ass 42-inch tube JVC TV that I had down here because I would not waver from anything I did because, that really mattered to them, what I was eating and where I was watching the game. But in my stupid head, it did. So I did that. So, yeah, if they started winning games, because I'm not going to try it, but I have to find something else. But, yeah, I would love to. I love the Giants to win again. It'd be nice. Anthony, you mentioned it real quick, and we'll close with this. We'll go around the thing. You mentioned Brian Daboll being an offensive guru, and I know we've probably talked about this before because we've talked about a lot of stuff on this show. We've covered a lot of topics. How much of that is Brian Daboll's lousy play calling, and how much is it the players unable to execute what he wanted to do?
I think it's more of the players' failure to execute because I've definitely seen several moments where there was a good play called and the execution wasn't there. The number one that comes to mind is that flea flicker in Germany versus the Panthers. That should have been a first down, if not a touchdown, and it ends up a sack. And I think there are a lot more moments like that. If you watch really closely over the last couple of years, where there were first downs or big play opportunities, and instead they were interceptions or late passes that result in short gains or sacks or fumbles, whatever. There were just so many moments where I felt like, hey, Daboll or Kafka, whoever drew that one up, did a good job, but the execution just wasn't there. And it is such a game of inches. So, and it's really hard to pinpoint who's more to blame, but I would put it on the players more than Daboll personally, because not that Daboll's done a fantastic job every single week. Like I said, he's not without his faults, but I think, as I've said before, when you go from a below average quarterback, like a bad quarterback, all the way to an average quarterback. Think about all the flaws in the bad quarterback's game that you eliminate just to get to average, and how that changes the entire complexity of your offense. Whether you're talking about throwing with timing, whether you're talking about reading pre-snap, identifying blitzers, or actually having accuracy to put it deep downfield and hit the receiver in stride so they can have some run after catch and create some big touchdowns. Like when Tyrod Taylor stepped in the game and started throwing deep post routes to Darius Slayton, and all of a sudden Darius Slayton was an elite deep threat. I think all those things you look at in a vacuum and you say, if that could consistently happen for the New York Giants, this offense probably could be pretty good, because those plays haven't changed. Those are the same plays Daboll and Kafka were calling a couple of years ago when Tyrod Taylor was hitting those deep shots and when the Giants offense was scoring points. Same exact plays as last season, but we didn't see any of the execution. So I think when the players do execute, it makes all the difference in the world. There just hasn't been good enough execution from the offense. But again, I think that upgrading to at least having an average quarterback in Russell Wilson, that's all you need. So now the execution should be there.
Chris, how much do you think it's Daboll, and how much do you think the players limited what Daboll could do on offense?
I think it's a combination of both. I think what Daboll really demonstrated his first year, and I felt like he kind of got away from it his second year, was that he was able to maximize the talent on the roster on the offensive side of the ball, specifically the quarterback position. He realized the limitations of Daniel Jones, and he got the most out of what he was capable of doing. He kind of turned him into almost a run-first quarterback because he realized that his legs were the best weapon. He dummied down the playbook. We all thought that his first year, it may have been because it was a new playbook, because he had limitations in terms of playmakers on the offense, a limited offensive line. Obviously, it didn't work out when he tried to expand the playbook. So, in a way, I felt like he was a little bit stubborn in the sense that I think he was trying to, I guess, turn Daniel Jones into something that we realized pretty quickly the second year with Daboll that he wasn't, and he didn't get back to that. But at the same time, Andrew Thomas went down, and that completely changed the dynamic of that offense. They went from being a bad offense to like the league's worst ever offense because of how poor that offensive line was. They give up like 90 sacks. You can't put all of that on the quarterback. The offensive line was a disaster as well. So I think it's a combination of multiple things. I think Daboll at times has looked great as a play caller, and at times he's been underwhelming, but it's kind of hard to measure. He probably got too much credit when he had Josh Allen, who's arguably the most talented quarterback in the league, and he's probably taken too much slander when he's had lack of talent at the quarterback position. I think he's a good enough play caller for sure if you have a good roster to have a good offense in the NFL. Let's put it that way, and that's valuable. There's not a lot of great play callers in the NFL, and Brian Daboll is one of the better ones.
Adriana, who's more at fault here? Is it Daboll's play calling? Is it the players unable to execute what he wants to do?
I'm with Chris. I think it's a little bit of both, because we did see plays that were successful throughout Brian Daboll's coaching career so far with the Giants. And we also have seen plays that would have worked if the quarterback made different decisions. So I think it's definitely a bit of both. I also think that when it comes to preparedness and discipline, though, I think that's on the coach, because when you have players who are making the same mistakes week in and week out, they are doing that because they're allowed to get away with it, which is unacceptable. And to me, that falls on the coaching. There's obviously something wrong. Either they don't understand why it's happening, they don't know how to fix it. That falls on the coaching to help the player get to that point. And we have seen Daboll, and he's talked about how he's super hard on the quarterbacks. And, you know, we saw it with Daniel Jones specifically, but he needs to be like that with all of the players. It's unacceptable for players to have the same mistakes over and over again. So if Mike Kafka does continue to call the plays this year, which I think would be great, and I think he should, then I want to see Daboll really focus on everything else that comes with being a head coach and being a good head coach. So I think that would work out better for him.
I think it is both. I don't think Brian Daboll is absolved of any wrongdoing here as far as the offense goes, but I feel like that he was limited in what he could do. And I feel like he did get the most out of Daniel Jones in 2022. I think Daniel Jones owes Brian Daboll a lot. He got $160 million because of Brian Daboll's offense. And I feel like the next season, maybe they did add a little bit more to Daniel Jones' plate. And Andrew Thomas going down certainly hurt the Giants. There's no doubt about it. But I also believe that defenses were able to adjust to what Brian Daboll did. Daniel Jones, his first year with Coach Daboll, and defenses adjusted. And then, it's kind of like when you're running as fast as you can, and you press your gas pedal all the way down to the floor, it can only go so fast, no matter how hard, no matter how much harder you push your gas pedal floor. And that's the floor. That's as fast as your car is going. That's kind of where they were. No matter what Daboll did with that quarterback room, there was only so much talent that could execute certain plays. And I do feel like a guy that can read defenses, like to Anthony's point, is much more accurate, that can read a hot, that can read the will, that can read the mic, that can see things, that can change plays to the line of scrimmage, blocking teams, not having all these unblocked cornerbacks and safeties come free and knock him on his ass. The ability to get rid of the ball, the ability to say, I'm just going to throw the ball out of bounds and not take a sack here on 3rd down and 2 if we want to go for it on 4th down or whatever. I feel like that's a lot of it has to do with the offense. And Brian Daboll is going to have a chance now. You got a Malik Nabers, you got a quarterback and Russell Wilson that certainly can play at a better level than any quarterback Daboll's had to work with. It'll be interesting to see what play calls are there and how they utilize Russ and how they utilize the offense, because I do feel like he's going to have more versatility with his play calling. Now, again, it's going to be up to the players to execute. We can talk about it all the time. Players have to execute. The coaches can only do so much. Coach can't tackle. The coach can't catch. The coach can't throw. To Adriana's point, yes, these stupid penalties on 3rd down and 1. I don't have any hair left, okay? But I want to rip the rest of – I'll rip my facial hair out, okay? With 3rd and 1, full start, offense. Now it's 3rd and 6. That type of shit can't happen. And to me, that is on coaching. You have to be able to execute. You can't make those stupid mistakes in those big situations. It's a game of inches. You lose 5 yards, that can be a loss. That's the type of shit that happens, and that's happened to us for years. So let's see if we can all put it together this year and have a good year. Have a competitive year. I would love to be here week 15 talking about, we have a chance. They're not as bad as we thought we were. Like in Major League when the construction guys go, these guys ain't so fucking bad. That's kind of what I want to be with the Giants. Anyone take a shot at this?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
You go for it. Yours is probably better than mine. I could read most of it though.
Not to brag, but I have like a 1900-day streak on Duolingo going. So,
nice.
All right, Anthony, you could tell me what I got wrong here. So a special salute to all of my, I think this is like friends, compadres, all of us, and all of the big group of Giants fans on the other side of the ocean. Cheers or hello from the Total Rugby Club in Italy.
Yeah, I wasn't even talking about, I think you translated it perfectly. I was talking about reading it the way he wrote it.
Listen to this.
I'll Anthony do that.
Come to this channel, you get to see us bullshit about the Giants for an hour, and you get a history lesson on speaking Italian. What's better than that?
Correct. Yeah, I just want to see uno saluto speciale tutti nostra campasani, Bad Dog, Oriana, Tena, Tony, e tutti I grandi tifosi dei Giants dell'altra parte dell'oceano. Salute da tutto il nostro Rugby Club Italia. Yes, no? Give me a pie over here. Give me a pie. Grazie. We appreciate you, Paisano. With that said, we're going to close it out. I don't think we can end it on a better note than that. Tuto, you're a legend, bro. We appreciate you. Let me get this back where I was. This. There we go. Thank you, Tuto. That brings us to another edition, a close of a Giants Collective. Of course, big shout out to BetUS for sponsoring the stream. You guys can become channel members if you like, just by clicking that join button. You're going to get custom emojis, monthly member messages, your name in the outro, and you'll get access to members only live chats. You can check us out on Instagram and TikTok. Links are in the description below. You can check us out wherever you get your podcasts, which is Apple, Spotify, Amazon. If you listen to us on Apple, please leave a 5-star review. That would help us out a lot. With that said, for Adriana, Anthony, and the entertainer, it is Bad Dog. We'll see you on Friday. We're over the hump. Can't wait for the weekend. Go Knicks. I don't want to talk about the Knicks. We'll see you on Friday. We out. Peace.